Good space time, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Citizen Web3 podcast, your source for educational insights into the Web3 universe and your connection hub to discovering those that contribute to building the decentralized world. Today, we are joined by Hanko from BanditoDAO Validator. We talk about grinding, being here for the tech, and learning everything. We discuss the global financial system, Beefy hardware, and choosing life. Finally, we touch upon the journey of a validator, geographical decentralization, and AI. If you enjoy our podcast, please share this episode to your favorite social platform to help us spread Web3 values across the universe.
The reason why we're successful is because the people who are involved with the validator are invested in the validator. I'm a college dropout. I don't code. I'm not a program. You know what I mean? I use Windows. I use Mac. The cost of running a validator has come down a lot over the last year or two. And that has been tremendously helpful as well, obviously. I had to learn everything. I had to learn Vim versus Nano. And I had to learn just basic terminal commands and navigating Linux.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of the Citizen Web3 podcast. And I have Hanko with me today from BanditoDAO. Hanko, hi. Welcome to the show.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
Yes, glad to have you on. So now that we figured out before the recording the weather is not too cold, not too hot, I'm going to ask you, how are you the second time? And in that, how are you? If I can please ask you to introduce yourself a little bit more in detail, tell me and the listeners everything you know us to know about you. How did you get to Web3? What are you doing? And anything else interesting, people to know about you, of course.
Sure, man. My name's Hanko. I've been in the Solana scene since beginning of 2021, and then I started running a validator shortly after that. Started playing around with launching a validator, I think April, maybe summer 2021. And then, ran a validator by myself for a few years and now run it with BanditoDAO. Ran it by myself for about a year, and now I run it with BanditoDAO. So it's been a few years overall. Prior to this, I did affiliate marketing, and I still do affiliate marketing and SEO stuff. So I've always been kind of chronically online. And then early on, at 2020, 2021, I started hearing about Solana and getting really interested in it. And started a validator, and that's kind of what I do now for BanditoDAO. And so we have about 100,000 Sol staked right now. We've been doing really well. Early on when I started the validator, it was, like I said, I started it by myself. And originally, I got into Solana early, and I had a good amount of Solana that I bought at $8 to $10. So I had about 300 Solana that I bought. And early on, I just really wanted to run a validator, got super invested in it. And I didn't realize how much Solana it would actually take to keep a validator going up. So over that entire first year that I was running it, year and a half, I burned through all of that 300 Solana just in voting fees. And I just assumed that if I got a validator running early on, that people would just stake to the validator node and it would be profitable, right? And I knew that I had to get to around 50,000 Sol staked, and I did briefly, but ultimately it didn't happen fast enough, and I didn't have enough momentum by myself to keep it going. So eventually, I'd been in BanditoDAO probably 6 months at that time. BanditoDAO is a sub DAO of MonkeyDAO, which is probably the largest DAO on Solana. And we are the monkeys with the sombreros. So anybody with a sombrero attribute Solana monkey business can get into BanditoDAO. It can be a generation 2 or a generation 3. It doesn't matter. And so what happened though is I was in BanditoDAO, and I make this Twitter post about just in general how I got to shut down my Solana validator because I'm running out of money. And so also Solana, I should mention this. Solana had ran from $8 when I got in at 2021. It ran all the way up to 260. I mean, the all-time high. And so I was running my validator all the way through then. And when you run a validator, it's like a double-edged sword because it takes Solana to run the validator. So when that means your fees in USD are high for the day if Solana is up, but then you're also making more when you're profitable. But when you're not profitable yet, those fees, it adds up, right? So I had used all this Solana that I had, and then Solana also tanked due to the FTX and the SAM stuff. And so it went all the way back down to $8. I just was so tapped out. I had burnt all my soul. I have this huge, like, I couldn't afford the $1,000 a month hosting bill. And, I just kind of thought it was over. And I posted about it on Twitter and kind of explained what had happened and how I couldn't continue, doing it. And that's when people in BanditoDAO started to reach out to me. And so I think it was J5 and Lieutenant Lollipop were like the two big ones. They reached out and they were like, how much soul do you need to keep this going? And like, how much money do you need? Like, you've been in the DAO like months and months. Like, how do we get this to continue? And they basically, I told him just straight up, like, if you want to be profitable from day one, we need about like 5,000 soul self-staked in the validator. And then like, I need like 10 grand up front to buy another year of hosting. And so like, I just kind of threw it up there thinking like, probably not going to happen. And they were able to coordinate a bunch of other guys in BanditoDAO. And I think the way that we did this is a really good model to follow. But essentially what we did is we started a council on BanditoDAO, the validator council. So we decided we got to raise this 5,000 soul from within our existing members. We're going to open up slots at 500 soul a piece, and people can buy a slot or two slots if they have that kind of soul. And that basically is just going to be self-staked in the validator. And we're going to keep this locked for like a year and see where it goes. And we had a few guys, a few like real big soul ballers step up, people that were like buying soul at $8, $10, $12. And we were able to get 5,000 soul for self-stake. And so that's when, so we relaunched just immediately. We rebranded to, from what I was doing it before, we just rebranded it as the BanditoDAO validator. We just kept the same identity and everything. And then we just started the grind. And like early on, we were profitable. We were profitable enough to keep paying for hosting. But we knew we had to make some changes if we were going to like take this to the next level. So like one of the big changes that we made early on is we decided that we were going to get into the Solana delegation program. So like prior to this, I was doing it all myself. This was when US residents just couldn't get in to the foundation program. Like they just wouldn't delegate if you were in the US. They changed that requirement probably about a year ago, I think. So once they changed that requirement, we applied to that, and we were able to get through. And basically that involves running a testnet node as well. So we expanded the operation, got a second node to run testnet. And then that's when, and by doing that, now Solana matches our delegations 1-to-1 up to like 100K. So it's been huge. And, so BanditoDAO helped me. We picked it up. We've had some guys over the time period who've needed to pull their investment out, which has been fine. Like we've been able to continue moving forward. But we still have the council, and I manage the node. So going back on like using this as like a model for DAOs, I've been very blessed. I was able to like contribute a good amount of soul and buy in financially into the council. And like, I've always wanted to do that for myself because I'm a big believer in holding and staking soul just in general. So I have a financial slot in BanditoDAO, but I also have a management position where, so what we do is we, like as shareholders, we get our original shares every month. We just do a payout of how much soul we made, but we also give a percentage to the DAO, which the DAO just gets for us using the Bandito name, and so we pay out our so now the whole BanditoDAO has a treasury that can be accessed, and it's like worth like $70,000. It'll be used to send people to Breakpoint, and then. And then again, as a manager, I also get a small percentage of the proceeds as well. So I think it's a good model for like DAOs who are going to be on Solana and they don't plan on like bridging to Polygon or whatever. If they're committed about Sol and they're like they want to stay on the chain, they're really here for the tech. It's a really good way for a DAO to like invest in the community and also add to their own soul bags over time. So. Yeah, I'll let you ask more questions here because I feel like I've been rambling quite a bit now.
No, it's good. It's good. This is a good story. So, first of all, let me say that I think it's always amazing to hear, like, a success community story where, you had trouble and then a community came in, and this is cool. I think that's amazing. I have more questions on BanditoDAO, the model, but I want to ask you about 2021. So you mentioned that 2021, you kind of got into the Solana scene, and then you started running a validator. But usually, at least from like my knowledge, my perspective, the jump doesn't happen like in a day, it doesn't a week. I mean, you don't just like, oh, here's crypto, here's my validator.
Oh,
What pushed
bro.
you? What pushed you? Tell me, come on, I want to know.
Yeah. That's a that's a great point. It's funny, man. Like I've told all these stories so many times. It's like I don't even remember sometimes to like even explain all this stuff. So like for the first year, like when I say I started a validator, man, like you got to understand. Like I'm a college dropout. I don't code. Like I'm not a pro. You know what I mean? Like like I use Windows. I use Mac. I have an iPhone. Like I'm not like the most crazy like coder elite guy in the world. And but like I so basically I heard Anatoly talk about Solana on the Solana podcast. And like back then, I think the podcast was called No Sharding, which they quickly got rid of because it was just like the funniest name for a podcast. But anyways, I was listening to the podcast episodes 1 and 2 and listening to Anatoly explain what Solana is. And like that was the first time for me that like I actually got excited about crypto. So like, we had like the 2016, 2017 cycle, and like I had a lot of friends that were into that stuff. But like before hearing that podcast, I didn't really buy into the whole crypto thing. I'm like, okay, maybe Bitcoin store wealth, but like ETH and like you're trying to do smart contracts and dApps, but it's like not, it's expensive and like it's slow. Like I don't see it like really working. And then when I heard about Solana, just kind of this whole paradigm shift on how the blockchain works and how it makes it insanely faster and cheaper than what we're used to, that I got like really excited. And I was like, okay, I want to do this. So, I'm like, well, how do I mine Solana? Right. Cause remember ETH people used to mine on proof of work. And I figured that's where I would start to buy some graphics cards or whatever. And it's like, oh, well, you don't actually mine, right? Like you run a validator that's just constantly validating transactions, and it's a proof of stake network. So I had to like learn all this stuff. But then on top of that, I didn't have that technical experience. Like I didn't have a whole lot of system admin experience. I certainly didn't know Rust, or or I never even seen Rust, right? Like I had to learn everything. I had to learn Vim versus Nano, and like I had to learn like just basic like terminal commands and like navigating like Linux. And back then too, when I started all this in 2021, it was funny. Like there was no real documentation for how to run a Solana validator because it was still a relatively new thing. And what I quickly realized is like the people who were really, really into the scene were like people from like Alameda and like people from like these huge tech firms that were like, they understood the tech and they were like dumping millions of dollars into setting up servers and then running validators and like taking that money and trading. They were like so into this. And so I realized, but what I realized there was like all these smart people that were like saying the kind of stuff that I heard on that first Solana podcast. They were all doing this stuff. And so I saw people like Zantetsu, like Lane, like there was endless amounts of them, and some of them weren't. Those guys were pretty nice to me, but I noticed that like a lot of people in the community were like they weren't like they just weren't they weren't incentivized to like help a newbie out. They had too many. When you have like a Discord of people coming in like, hey, how do I also mine Solana? They're like, dude, we can't help you. Right. So like I realized that I wasn't going to get a whole lot of help from those guys in like the Solana Discord. And that was fine. Right. Like I realized I had to chew my glass and like earn my stripes and stuff. And so what I did was I started going to hacker houses, and I went to one in Los Angeles. God, I can't remember which one it was, man, but it was one of those early ones. Um, and that was really cool. And I met Raj out there. I like set up my MacBook. It was actually funny. Like Raj was walking by with God, who was it? It was like one of the early NFT guys. But I sit down, I was just blown away that I saw Raj. I was like, holy shit, that's the other guy. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, yo, Raj, can I have a picture? I'm starting a validator. And he just like stops what he's doing. He's like with his, like, you know, his whole entourage, and he like stops and turns around. He's like, yeah, come here, take a picture. So I got my picture with Raj that day. And I literally, bro, like I would set my MacBook up in these the monitors that they have at these hacker houses. And like, by the way, if you haven't been to a hacker house, I highly recommend it. Like, it is such a great time, and you can learn so much. So I would plug my MacBook in, and like I'd SSH to my server. I'd pull the terminal up, and like this was in the early days. Like I still didn't have the validator running, so like I would like try to follow the docs and like break it, and then I just leave the error on the screen, and I would go walking around the room, and I'd be like, hey, do you know anything about Solana validators, or do you know anything about Rust, or like, do you know what this error means? And then like or like I'd ask somebody if they knew somebody, and then like somebody would finally, because you know, somebody randomly walks up to like, hey, I hear you're on a validator. You know, they're usually like, oh yeah, I do. Great. You want to go look at this error on my screen real quick, you know, see? And that's literally what I did, man. And I didn't even get the validator running that first hacker house. I went to another one like months and months later, maybe even like 6 months later in New York City. Me and my buddy drove up from South Florida. We rented a minivan and drove all the way up to New York City. So it was me, my other buddy Sammy, and these other two guys. And so there's four of us in this minivan. I think we drove like 18 hours up to New York City or something. And we did the same thing. Sammy ended up helping me a lot. And I can't remember exactly what day it was, but eventually I had a working validator, right? And then that was like the first big thing. And then it's like, okay, it's running, but then it's like, it's got to be profitable, you know? So then like, that was the second challenge that I didn't even realize I had yet. But yeah, man, it was a lot of fun. It was, those early days were a grind, and like, but you know, I'm a big believer in myself, and like, if there's something that I'm passionate about and that like I want to do, like I don't feel like there's anything out there that I can't learn, and if it's out there. And nowadays it's much different, right? Nowadays, like, you have ChatGPT, we have more people running validators. The resources are endless now compared to what they were when I started. So it's a much different story, and people can actually do this stuff, you know, pretty easily now. So
let me ask you a bit of a strange question, but I think you're the perfect person to ask that. So, as somebody, like, go back in 2021, you know, you're in a hacker house, you're kind of trying to find what to do with the validator, you're asking people how to mine Solana, whatever, it doesn't matter. But what did you think?
Just to clarify, I wasn't asking people how to mine Solana after I learned how to Solana.
I'm sorry.
There are still noobs that come into the Discord and that say that kind of stuff today.
But
I'm sorry, continue.
No, of course, this is all fun and games, man. It's all good. So, but in all seriousness, like, what did you think about the journey? Because the reason I'm asking, let me explain. I want to explain this because I've been doing this for a while, and it's very hard for me to judge how difficult is the onboarding process. It feels sometimes very easy at this point, and sometimes it feels very hard when something breaks. But I want to, like, from your side, from your story, after, like, you know, you had all this, like, some people answered, some people didn't answer. Like, do you think that the journey right now for a normie into the Web3 world, and I don't mean just buying and selling tokens, but into like becoming a validator, a miner, doesn't matter. Is it like, you know, difficult? Was it like super? I don't know. Just how was it for you?
So like I was
what did
saying,
you think
like,
after? I mean,
yeah. So after like I got in and I started, I mean, let me just be clear, dude. Like, me running this validator is my dream job. Like, this is the best side gig in the world. Like, as of right now, like, it's not enough income to, like, just from managing it that I can just do this, right? But like, when I started, for sure, there was like, I would hear about these people and these nerds out in like Boston. I would have like 10 validators and had like ran out and like raised money, and they were killing it. So like that's kind of what got me inspired. But like the thing is like I really do believe in the chain. I believe in Solana. I really don't follow other blockchains. I don't even own any Ethereum. And I've owned very little Bitcoin. Like I really am kind of all in on Solana. I really do believe in the tech. But like running the validator is like the best side gig in the world. Like nowadays, it's much easier to get it started, and it is kind of a fun side hobby to do. Like it is profitable, but you got to know what you're doing and you got to do your research. Back then, like you could do your research, but you could only learn so much. Like there wasn't like people out there who'd like encountered certain server configurations that would like mean that like there wasn't like Stack Overflow like threads out there with like what common issues, right? So like I don't know, man. Like I think people should get involved if it's something that interests them. Like Web
I
three is
understand.
is awesome, and but yeah, absolutely.
I'm trying, I'm trying to paint a picture of how, because my belief is that it's not difficult if you want to achieve it. And that's basically what you're saying, I have an interest, the information is out there, and I'm kind of going there, I'm getting it. And I think that's how it should be, because sometimes people say that it's impossible, and I don't think there's nothing impossible, right? It's just a matter of resource and desire, right? So I'm trying to get it. But I wanna you said you kind of told about how the story started, and you know what happened during the story. Why? Like, what's the reason for later? I mean, I hear the side gig, I hear like believe in the tech, but what's your story with it in 5 years? Let's say it becomes profitable, and you keep on expanding your horizons. Why? What's your end goal? Where is it gonna go?
That's the most exciting thing, right? Is like we don't know what's going to be built on Solana, right? That's the coolest thing about it is like Solana. I look at it as like kind of like a blank canvas, and I thoroughly believe like if you were able to buy Solana when I bought it, hold it all the way up to 260, hold it all the way down to $8, hold it all the way back up. At this point, like nothing's going to shake me out. So like I feel like I've gotten the worst out of my way. And now it's just kind of just like, let's see what gets built on the chain. At the end of the day, it's like, I think that blockchains have a really good use case. I really do believe that Solana can be used as a blockchain that can power like a global decentralized finance system. And just the fact that so many transactions are happening nonstop on the Solana blockchain, it just fascinates me, right? And like I know it's like I understand it's like the tech, but like what's next? It's like I don't even know. That's the coolest part is, and like as a validator, like I win all day long as there's transactions. As long as Solana is being used, the validators get compensated for the work that they do and the risk that they take by running the node. So it's cool. It's like a side gig. It's a hobby for me, but it's also like I'm building my Solana bags long term. And like I want to hold, I want to hold 1,000, 2,000 Solana one day, and like I think Solana will be over $1,000 one day. And so like I have bigger things that I think it's going to go to. But in the meantime, it's a lot of fun, and you get to be involved with the community. You get to contribute to the blockchain that you're telling everybody about and that you really do believe in, and you're also generating revenue for your DAO. So kind of everybody wins, and the people who originally invested the 500 SOL a piece to get us off the ground, like they still have that 500 Solana, but like their return on their investment is much higher nowadays than had they just staked that Solana natively or thrown it into a liquid staking token like an LST. So everybody that has been involved with this node has benefited from this entire process, and it's just been a lot of fun and along the way. So yeah, it's just been great, man. Like I said, it's a shiny spot in my life. It really is a bright spot in my life.
Tell me about the model, more about the model, like in simple terms, BanditoDAO. Like as far as I'm gonna be honest, I have never heard of it. I have had previously Solana validators. Late, like over the past half a year, I've started to invite more Solana validators. They haven't spoken about that. Like neither Monkey DAO, neither BanditoDAO. I'm not very familiar. Tell me about the model a little bit. How does it work with the validators investing, returning? Like, what's the deal there?
So just to be very, very, very clear, Monkey DAO runs a validator, and we have nothing to do with it. And like BanditoDAO is completely separate. Um, so I can't speak on their model, but so what I can say is that BanditoDAO doesn't use DAO funds, didn't use DAO funds to start the validator. And we think that this is very, very important. We have other things that we do in the DAO, and I'll give you another example. BanditoDAO has Bandito stables, and we have have you heard of Photo Finish? So it's a digital horse racing game for people listening who haven't heard of it. It's sponsored by the Kentucky Derby, and essentially it lets you buy like NFT horses. You can breed them. You can race the horses. You can bet on races. You can race your horses, and like when they win, you make money. There's a ton of cool stuff you can do in the game, and it's surprisingly fun, and it's been popular, right? And so about a year ago, we started a stable in Photo Finish, and we did the same exact model that we did with the validator. We did an initial raise, so we didn't use DAO funds, but we went to our community and we said, does anybody want to throw in money to start a Photo Finish stable? And we did the same thing. We said you can do increments of $500, as many slots as you want, and then we'll like cap it once we think it's big enough. And we ended up raising I think it's funny. Like I think it was actually like $69,000, but we ended up raising that about 48 hours amongst our members. And then we did the same thing. So we said, okay, we're going to give, I think we do 5% to the manager, the guy who runs it. And he's a Bandito, like an OG Bandito as well. And then we're going to do, I think 20% goes to the DAO. And then the remaining 75% is going to get pied out to holders every like quarter. And so we've done this for a year, and I think we've had like 3 or 4 payouts. And so every single holder has already been made whole, 100%. Everybody's made their money back. Whether you put in $500, whether you put $5,000, 1 slot versus 10 slots, it's the same thing. So that's the same approach that we did with the validator. We didn't say like, oh, we did an NFT and like we sold all of them, and now we have $5 million worth of Solana, and now we're just going to throw it in a validator. And like that's not what we're doing, right? Like the reason why we're successful is because the people who are involved with the validator are invested in the validator. The people who are involved with the Photo Finish stable are invested with the Photo Finish stable. And whether you want to be invested as a manager or as a shareholder, either way, the DAO is going to win either way, because the DAO gets a percentage of both of those ventures. And in the meantime, the DAO has a thriving Discord where we talk, we share plays. We have a whole like channel for the horses. We have a whole channel for the validator. Every month we share the validator report, and we show like what's been contributed to the DAO. It's great. So like the validator, I think like every month the DAO gets like around 10 SOL just from the validator alone. And so long story short, like that's why I think the way that BanditoDAO does it is a good example. And I'm not going to speak on others, but like not everybody shares the same mentality as us there, or maybe they do, but they haven't acted that way. But as a DAO that like started with nothing, and like we wanted to like really grow this from the ground up and just continue to run these, continue to all be involved in Solana, but like continue to do these kind of plays in Solana. We're all kind of sticking around, and like I've been in BanditoDAO now for, I don't know, I think it'll be 3 years in December, officially. And that'll be in like, I've met some of my best friends there, like I some of these guys that like, like I know I could call them if I needed something. I know that like they're there for me. I'm there for them. Like they've developed into like real friendships. And, that's why I stay doing what I'm doing. And that's why I feel so invested in the validator, in the DAO in general,
It's amazing. I think it's awesome. I saw the other, when was it? I don't know, when maybe last week, I believe, a speech by Mastop Murad. Is like a famous analyst.
Yeah.
You heard of him. Yeah. So, and he did like a good a talk on meme tokens, and he was trying to argue that the value is exactly that what you're talking about. That is the utility, not just the value. It's the utility. It's that belonging. It's that connection. And I think it's as much as I might not agree with everything, you cannot argue with that. It's very difficult to put an argument there because I'm the same, and I'm in the same boat, and I felt it, and I know it. It's fucking awesome. Yeah. But what I wanted to mention though about when you were talking about the BanditoDAO is that I wanted to ask you actually. I mean, I know you said you're concentrated on Solana, but I can tell you that outside of Solana, there are validators are trying to do different launches. Mostly, it's a very one man kind of or a one company entity. So it's very cool to hear about what you're saying. Is that like in Solana? This is the question on Solana. Is there a widespread practice to kind of DAOs to launch validators or invest into validators or similar things?
It's becoming more and more popular for sure. Yeah, and I think the Solana Foundation has done a great job with encouraging communities to run validators. So they have like the delegation program. But I will say, like, not to toot our horn too much, but like BanditoDAO really did kind of pave the way as far as like a homegrown, small community ran validator that started it from scratch and is using the validator as a tool to build the DAO and not the other way around, where we're using the DAO funds to like grow a validator. I think when we do it in that order, when you're coming together as a community of like-minded people and you're starting a validator from scratch, I think it's just so beneficial for the DAO in the long term. And yeah, I'll tell you. So like, it wasn't BanditoDAO, but like also some other ones, some OGs out there, like Thugbirds has a validator as well. Obviously, Monkey DAO as well. But like nowadays, it's a lot more common to see like NFT projects and DAOs and other entities on Solana launching validators, because it really is like it checks all the boxes. You're basically saying like, I'm here for the long run. I'm okay with like taking my profits in Sol, right? And in the meantime, it's like you just have this great instrument that makes you more Solana, So I think it's a popular choice now for communities. And I think the other thing too is like the cost of running a validator has come down a lot over the last year or two. And that has made tremendously helpful as well, obviously.
Do you have any thoughts on today, if we look deep down inside a validator, doesn't matter what is the architecture, and really there are many that I heard about. At the end of the day, validators are still centralized entities, right? They are still beneficial. Well, with the DAO, it's a bit less centralized, but there are still several beneficiaries. It's not like on-chain beneficiaries that receive, I don't know, not all the chain benefits from it. So in that sense, it's central. Those are centralized entities. Do you think that in the future, or do you have any thoughts at all on the future, like how validators will shape? Will they, I don't know, become contracts that are run on chain, or I don't know? Do you think it's gonna change, like become more decentralized or more centralized, or only DAOs will own validators? I don't know, like anything at all in that direction. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. I think Solana is always striving to be more decentralized, and so I think that's a big. I mean, that's a big part of like why the foundation wants more validators to run on the chain. The foundation, they're it's just like the ETH Foundation, right? Like they don't have like an endless supply of money. So like they have a job and a purpose to fill while they're there. And I think that it's always been talked about like the foundation is, really straightforward. Like they really just want to be here for like the first 10 years to help kind of like push us along the way. And by the time that they're gone and that like centralized money is kind of distributed out there, among the chain, the job we do need to have like a really rich infrastructure with multiple clients and multiple validators, not only just running validators but developing on Solana as well. So I think that we've done a great job, right? Like if you look at the Nakamoto coefficient, which is a number that can be used to show how decentralized the blockchain is. Solana has been trending up, which is good. ever since the beginning, and it does rank as like one of the more decentralized blockchains out there. It drives me crazy, but I'll be happy to talk to anybody who says otherwise. There's people still out there that says, "Oh, Solana is a centralized chain," and it's like it's just not true, man. Like it's not true at all. We have like over 1,000 validators right now, like individual people out there that run nodes across the world. We have nodes in pretty much every continent now, other than Antarctica, and it's continuing to get better and better and better every day. So decentralization is a big part of Solana, and I certainly think that it's going to continue to trend in that direction. Yeah.
Talking about geographical decentralization, what are your thoughts in this direction? You mentioned running in the cloud, and I guess like solo staking, especially on Ethereum, is a big topic now, and you see more deep-in projects popping up here and there, trying to promote some bare metal, self kind of custody and all that. What are your thoughts in that direction? Do you think more people should run validators from home, or it of course depends on the situation? Like, what are your thoughts in on this?
It's a great question. Yeah. So with Solana specifically, the hardware requirements and it's so like the requirements for running a validator are much higher than what you would typically find in a home. So it's more than just the hardware, but let's just start with the hardware. So hardware, you're going to need like an enterprise server because you're going to need like an AMD EPYC chip or something along that line that can consistently run at like a pretty good clock speed, and also just has the power to do what a Solana node needs to do. So you're usually not going to find that in like a traditional like PC motherboard form factor. You're going to need like a server form factor. In addition to that, like for RAM, probably like 256 gigs of RAM is a good place to start. Like ours has 512 gigabytes of RAM. And again, like you're not going to be able to even put that much RAM on a traditional home like PC motherboard. So like, let's say you do run a whole server out of your house. The second thing is like you need the internet connection because like I'll pull up our Solana node now just so I can see like what it looks like. But literally all day long, we have up and download speeds of like 400 megabits, or I'm sorry, megabits. And that can spike. Like that can go up to like well over a gigabit. So you need a 10 gigabit connection, and it needs to be able to like handle that. So like let's say you do have a 10 gigabit connection at your house. The other thing is how much data transfer you're actually using. Like most ISPs at home will not let you do like 80 terabytes of transfer a month, sometimes more. I mean, it really is a lot, right? The Solana blockchain is a powerhouse, and it never sleeps, it never stops. It has had its problems, but we're coming up on a year now with no outages. And so what I'm trying to say is like you can build this great server, but you need to run it in a data center. So that's what people will say when they say it's centralized or like it's more centralized, is because it has to be run out of a data center, and that leads to an attack vector. But ultimately, like what we do is we rent a bare metal configuration in Los Angeles, and we don't use cloud infrastructure really. Like back in the day, you could kind of get away with running like a Hetzner node or even AWS node, but nowadays, like the amount of data that you need, it's just not feasible. So the best way to do it is just to kind of rent your hardware, I would say, and just do bare metal month to month. But hopefully one day, like we will be able to run a Solana node at home. I think that's like something that's been talked about, but it's as of right now, like Solana needs that like beefy hardware. So
are there any known validators, by the way, that run Solana from out of a data center?
Like RPC services?
No. Do you know of any validators in Solana that run their validator out of a data center, not in a data center today?
Yeah.
There is.
Oh, not in a data center. So I think Knox. No. Like I think there are, but there's a guy named Knox. I think it's Knox Trades on Twitter. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I think he runs Juicy Stake is what it's called. Like I've seen him post pictures of his hardware, and so like I know he doesn't rent his hardware. So I know he actually does own his hardware. And whether or not he runs it out of his home or data center, not entirely sure. Technically, you could do it. Like if you approach your ISP, or if you have a good ISP, or like if you have like an office building with a good connection, you could probably do it and like be in front of your node at all times. You know, and I would see like if somebody's really like both like they want to go like have the most control, you can certainly do it. But for most people, it just ends up working better if you rent the hardware somewhere else.
Of course, of course. Now, I was curious, like in terms of what are the current situation, and yeah, makes sense. I already spoke to like everybody, all the validators that come on our show. Pretty much, you know, like they talk about that yeah, the Solana guys. I mean, that their requirements for running from home are very, very, very difficult to meet. I'm curious though whether there is any I mean, this is a strange question. I guess it's very technical, so I don't know whether you want to tackle it or not. But I mean, it's not a technical question. It's a general question on a technical topic. Whether there is any like it's probably going to sound very stupid. Whether there are any developments of like light form clients of Solana by the foundation that require a lot less. And
it's a great question.
Okay, thank you.
So Firedancer isn't being developed by the foundation, but it is in development. That's from Jump, and they did a demo of Firedancer at Breakpoint. So Firedancer is a separate client for Solana that is not as compute intensive, from what I understand. It's coded in C instead of Rust, and I think it's designed to be more lightweight. This has been in development a long time, and they did a demo at Breakpoint with basically announcing that it's running on testnet. And then they have a separate client that they're calling Frankendancer, and that's like part Firedancer, part just vanilla Solana client. And then they demoed that on mainnet, and so like that's running. So Firedancer isn't out yet, but I think that it's coming. Like I think it's coming, and I think over time the trend will be towards less compute intensive. Like I think there's a big room for that. Absolutely.
Good. It's good to see a lot of more networks, I guess, pick that topic up and understand. I mean, I guess we kind of skipped it, you know, the conversation for light clients and started, well, I don't know, 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. And it's good to see that we are finally catching up, because every network, every ecosystem today, in my opinion, has the same issue. We're, you know, we're going to there and thick clients. But yeah, anyways, but I wanted to ask you on one of your topics. I'm gonna tie it on one of your interests. You know, the internet today is a marvelous place to tell us about people's interests. About SEO. So SEO, like it's a mystery in the blockchain world. I guess it's like a bit of a golden treasure hunt, because, you know, if you look at domain authority of some websites in crypto, you kind of like, what the hell is happening here? You know, why is it like that? And in crypto, it's like, yeah, this is the most popular website in the world. But anyways, like, what's your opinion on that? Do you have any, like, I don't know, because you see a lot of the crypto folk kind of making the same mistakes, and people say at the outside, say, oh, I mean, Solana is actually a good exception here with the marketing campaign and how they are putting themselves out there. So what are your thoughts in general about that? Again, I know you're focused on Solana, but, you know, maybe something general, but yeah could be about Solana too. So
Sure. Yeah, so I'm actually working on a project right now that is going to utilize my SEO experience for Solana. It's not quite out now, but it's called Solidex. And essentially we're going to be providing creating a Solana directory that's kind of SEO focused to kind of help projects that are in the early stages get some brand exposure online, because it's a big thing, right? Like we're in this crazy time, not with just crypto developing really fast, but like search engines and AI, like that's the other huge thing that's going on in our world. And like from the SEO perspective, like SEO is search engine optimization. We've been using search engines to organize and rank data for like the last 20 years. And it's a really good system, but we didn't have AI 20 years ago. So like not only is blockchain changing like nonstop, but like the search landscape is changing a lot too. And you just can't expect, what I've learned is that you can't expect crypto apps, like small little apps with small dev teams to know or care, or nor should they care about optimizing, doing lengthy SEO campaigns, right? Because it's a lot, right? It's a lot, and it's usually not something that people are focused on. So definitely when apps have a little bit of a presence and they have some budget, it's something that they start to ask about. And then what you realize is that there's not a huge crossover or overlap between the crypto space and people who have like extensive amounts of SEO experience. And so I've been helping. I've helped a few projects over the years with their efforts. And yeah, it's cool. It's definitely an interesting space, though. The cool thing with what I'm launching with Solodex is that you brought up domain authority. That's going to be one of the big things that we help projects get when they're launching on Solana, is getting some of that domain authority as well. So the idea is that we're going to build this kind of conglomerate, this asset, and we're going to do our link building campaigns, and then we're going to be able to pass that link juice back on to other Solana projects by linking out with like do follow links to their projects. And what I've already learned, and like what's been abundantly clear, is that it doesn't take much when a project is in its early stages to like rank in the top 3 slots on Google for their brand terms. So the idea is that we want to be able to have a Solana project, and somebody can say, "Oh yeah, like you should go check out like Orca on Solana." And like if they say that in a bar to somebody, we want to make sure that somebody can go to Google, type in Orca Solana, and then like our page is going to rank up there. And we've had success already with our preliminary testing. And yes, that's going to be something that we're offering in the not so distant future. So that's going to be a Solana exclusive thing too for Solana projects.
What's your one advice for people working and having their own projects in crypto in terms of SEO? Do's or don'ts. I don't know, like 1 or 2 things.
So the do's, you want to just make sure that your traditional stuff is taken care of, like your meta tags, your title, your description, your sitemap. Like just connect your site to Google Search Console and Google Analytics, definitely Google Search Console, and like use their tools to make sure that there's not any flagrant errors in your site. The biggest thing is you just don't want to make your site super difficult for Google to crawl. Google's pretty good if if you build a site that like their crawler can hit and it's pretty easy to navigate. Google can take care of a lot. What I see a common mistake though is like you see these really immersive UX experiences on front end apps, and they're great. But like if the majority of your content doesn't even show for a crawler, like until somebody connects with their wallet, like that site's not gonna, like your stuff's not gonna get indexed, right? Like that site's just gonna be doomed. So people have been building these really awesome crypto apps that like have these immersive experiences, but you still have to have like the bread and butter. Like you got to have some text on that page that like explains what it is and whatever. You just got to remember that Google's a little dumber than what we are used to now with like AI and stuff. So you got to kind of just lay stuff out and just remember that like your user can understand everything, but you got to make it so the search engines understand everything as well.
Thanks. Kind of last question about, before we jump into a blitz or a small blitz with you, about the validator. Once again, I guess it's more Solana focused, but I don't see how it's not applicable to other places as well. Considering that your validator has been part of a DAO for a while, I guess that it's kind of, well, I'm going to make an assumption, and I'm sorry if it's wrong, and please correct me. It's kind of easier with the community building, but it's an assumption, and this is one part of the question. Is it easier? Is it actually easier to build a community if you're part of a DAO for your validator? And the second part, what's your experience and what's your advice for other people starting validators or running validators already to help themselves build a community? Because it seems to be one of the hardest parts as well for validators.
Yeah, I would say community first. And I know that sounds cliche, but like take it from me as somebody who I wanted to run a validator more than anything, and I tried more than anything to do it by myself. I really think unless you are just like flush with Solana, like unless you have like 5,000 SOL I mean, some people are out there. You're gonna have a very small percentage of listeners who like are smart enough to run a validator, have the capabilities and have the capital. In that case, do it. But other than that, like build a community, because you're gonna surround yourself with people who are gonna help you along the way. Like when you feel like you're losing, they're gonna feel like they're losing too. You know, when you feel like when you're winning, they're going to feel like they're winning too. Like there's value in that when you're all kind of riding together for a common purpose. And especially with a validator, man, because it's much more than just starting it up and watching it grow. You know, you got to have procedures for stuff. You got to make sure that somebody's authorized on the server and there's a backup person who knows like how to get into the server just in case you get hit by a bus. You know, like there's all these kind of things that you get from you benefit from when you team up with other people. And a lot of that is just reflecting like what we already know in Web3 and crypto with like the benefits of multi-sigs and like shared wallet, you know, like ownership. Like those are the kinds of stuff that like it's really applicable for not only like running a validator, but managing one as well. So I think starting with a community and building that from the ground up. And then when you're at a point where you can check all the boxes to start a validator, which is, you know, if you're going to be profitable from day one, you need 5,000 self stake or about 50, 60,000 delegated stake. So it doesn't mean that you have to have that from day one, but if you surround yourself with a bunch of people that are able to share with you on a loss for a little bit as you build that up, it's a lot more manageable. So you can always start it, and as long as you're on the right track and you're growing, you know, it'll work out. So
makes perfect sense. I think that, you know, building a community is something a lot of validators kind of skip on, and I'm partially guilty of it myself, so I totally understand where you're going with it. So let me do a quick blitz. 3 questions. They're going to be not about Solana, not about blockchain. They're going to be weird, I warn you. But it's to take us out of the conversation and kind of, you know, to finish it off. So first question, give me either a movie or a book or a song that has had a positive influence on you throughout your life, or at least since you started with Web3.
I'm just gonna give you one of my favorite movies.
Let's go.
It's funny. It's called Train Spotting.
Amazing.
It has Ewan McGregor. Yeah, it's a great film. It's hilarious. It's vile. It's graphic. It's motivational. It's got great writing. It's just one of my favorite movies of all time. And my favorite line in that whole movie is the beginning when it says "Choose life."
Choose life. Choose life.
Choose life.
Yes,
it's one of my favorite monologues, man. So,
absolutely. Yeah. Guys and girls and robots who listening to this, don't forget show notes. You know, you can check everything me and Hanko mention, and especially the movie, of course. Check it out, learn it, and have a look if you haven't seen. So 2 more questions. They're gonna get weirder. So give me one motivational thing that keeps you out of bed every day, running Solana validators, you know, being a part of BanditoDAO, and, you know, talking to people online, going to hacker houses, you know, trying to do something. What was something motivational that keeps you doing it every day?
Sorry, you kind of cut out there, but for motivational, like what keeps me going, I mean, the biggest thing is Breakpoint every year. Breakpoint is a once-a-year event that the Solana Foundation runs. It's in a different country every year. And it's just a time where everybody can get together and hang out. And like one of the cool things about running a Solana validator for my DAO is that they send me to Breakpoint every year. And like that's a big part of it. So they help me with my flight. And yeah, that keeps me going. It's the best time of the year, man.
When you come to Portugal, hit me a hello, definitely.
Absolutely.
Last one. This is gonna be the weirdest one, but it's the last one, I promise. Dead or alive, a real person or a made-up character, could be a cartoon character, could be a writer, an author, doesn't matter. Somebody who is not a guru, because we always try to say we don't believe in gurus, but a personage or a character or a person that when you're stuck, you can't help but to think of them, and that helps you. to do whatever it is you're doing?
That's a really good one. You know what I like to think about? Maybe it's not just one person, but one of my things that really interests me is like quantum physics and a lot of the history. Like if you just look at like the very early 1900s, a lot of those guys, from Enrico Fermi to there's a lot of them, but all of those groundbreaking discoveries that they made, and just the fact that they did that all with what they had at the time. And like 100 years ago, they were able to like figure out that we have atoms and then quarks and quantum field theory. Like all these things are relatively new things that they just discovered with sheer brain power. The fact that Einstein was able to calculate, exactly what the energy to mass, calculation is, like all that stuff just really fascinates me. And so whenever I feel like, I'm like, God, I'm not like, I feel like I'm not going to like have anything, like, I feel like I'm not motivated. I think about those guys and how like they didn't know the amount of stuff that they were going to discover and like what was going to happen and everything. And I feel like that's kind of what we're dealing with blockchain. Like we're kind of at that kind of level of innovation now, where it's like we have blockchain and AI, and who knows like what the next big great thing is going to be. But like I know that like I'm going to be in the scene when it happens, and that's what keeps me in here.
I love it. I love it. This was a very good point, I think, to finish on. Hanko, I want to thank you for your answers. Please don't hang up just yet. This is going to be a goodbye for the listeners. For all the listeners, thank you very much for joining us, and see you next week. Hanko, thank you.
Thanks, man.
This content was created by the Citizen Web3 Validator. If you enjoyed it, please support us by delegating on citizenweb3.com/staking and help us create more educational content.